What makes a game fun? This is sort of like an unfair question, but it's like an open-ended question at the same time too. And so I want to aim this question at the Division, but also take the same sort of light that we're shining in a way with this question at any other game that you may play now, that you have played in the past, and you may play in the future. So with the Division, for me, what makes it fun? Now, this is highly subjective and almost unfair. I'm not necessarily advertising my position for the game and why I think it should be fun or why I think it has to be fun. But so far, my experiences have led me to the decision that I have had a good time, hence fun. But it's also very subjective. So before we get into the subjective stuff, let's talk about the objective reasoning between what is fun and what isn't a fun game. And overall, generally speaking, this has to be very general and vague because, again, if you go into any type of nitpicky stuff, you're sort of entering the realm of subjective and person versus person, and I like vanilla and I like chocolate and I like strawberry kind of thing. So in the general grand scope of everything out there, a good game generally is a playable game where the mechanics make sense to the player, the user interface is generally receptive, and of course, if you're in, say, an FPS, the online component works, it's good, it's fun, it's rewarding, there's no cheaters, hackers, it's not broken, it allows you to play, you can log in, play with your friends almost immediately, etc., right? So all of those things, I think, allow a good foundation for a good game. And that's obviously pertaining to the FPS. For an MMO, for a MOBA, the variables are different, obviously. But in the case of an FPS, they're pretty much standard. Gunplay has to make sense, the single-player story should be there and concrete, the multiplayer experience should be lag-free or as close to lag-free as you can get, and it should be supported through a skill-based or rewarding-based system where if you're smart and intelligent and just generally good, you're going to have a good time and be rewarded. But if you play with your friends, you can also do that and be rewarded, right? So that's the objective mindset, at least where I come from. And that's not covering everything, but that's covering a good portion of it. Now, the subjective side is a lot different. And it's very hard to sit there and say, this game is good because it has crafting. Well, maybe, maybe not. I think it's good because it has a potential system of crafting, which some other MMOs recently have lacked. But most MMOs, most good MMOs, provide a vibrant system of crafting. Now, I'm not saying Division's crafting system is vibrant. I personally think from what I've seen so far of the blueprint mechanics, it's very shallow. It doesn't look like it's going to be the trading system mechanic where you need X amount of materials that you have to go farm weeks for to build something that's awesome that you're probably the only person in the game that will ever have it. I don't think it's going to be like that. But I do think it's going to give you a sense of accomplishment, a rewarding sensation if you do build something. But it's entirely optional to do so. So that's a subjective point. The second point is gunplay. And this is very subjective. I was going to assume that a majority of you, at least that watch this video, have consumed other information, besides from my own, about the Division. And a lot of the opinions out there are negative and positive on the gunplay. Big point is, the enemies are too spongy, etc. I think that if I shoot someone in the head, they should die. This is a realism type game, or maybe it's not, etc. You get the varying of opinions, almost a sea, if you will, of what is and what shouldn't be an FPS experience, but it's largely based on people's subjective responses to what they think the game should be, and not what the developer's intent. So again, it's a very subjective response. I personally think the gunplay is fine. I think it's a little weird on console to do the recoil, but on PC it's a little bit easier to control. That was just me. I play on low sensitivity on both sides, so I noticed that the recoil wasn't so bad on the console, but it's definitely different on the PC. Overall, though, both experiences were excellent. I had a great time playing on both, and I noticed that the gunplay was pretty much the same. It's the same gunplay, you just notice differences in recoil. That's about it. So, okay, gunplay is good, for me, at least. Maybe not for everyone. But what about the one core concept that is always advertised but never really talked about? And that's the social experience. The experience where you get to go in with your friends or maybe people you don't know to experience a different world that you don't have access to in your everyday life. And every single game, I would say, to be fair, tries to propose this to you, the consumer, that you are entering a fantasy world that you'll never have an opportunity to experience anywhere else except in their game. World of Warcraft is the best, I would say, example of what a fantasy world could look like, in my experience, when you're talking about MMOs. It was one of the first, besides, Ultima Online and stuff like that, but it was one of the first mainstream MMOs to be widely adopted by the general consumer public when it came to the release of MMOs. And obviously there were MMOs before that, and there will continue to be MMOs after, but WoW has continued to be the gold standard of what any other MMO, at least of the caliber that WoW operates in, that other developers are going to try to reach. The Division is more or less a Destiny competitor in a way, because it's sit on the consoles, it's an MMO FPS, give or take. The acronym there is IFFY, I'd say. But I think you get the general statement. But the idea here is that the social experience of an MMO is that you have the ability to play with your friends, play with people you don't know, and play against your friends and people you don't know. And this is really where the subjective part comes in, because you can say that to have a good game, it has to have a good social experience, and that could be an objective answer. But everyone's social experience is going to be a lot different. For me, for example, the social experience is very literally taken. It's the actual social experience that I have with other players in a game. And it's even taken to a deeper niche in a way where I try to roleplay a certain character to provide a better social experience for myself and potentially the players that I may run into. That type of variable is something that you don't often see. And sometimes you do in MMOs where they have roleplay specific servers, right? But most of the time it doesn't exist in standard MMO FPSs. Destiny players are not role-playing their characters, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe some of them are. I haven't met any. Division, I think you're not going to run into too many people role-playing. Games like Arma and The Culling and stuff like that, and Reign of Kings, games like that that are like survival-based, you're going to run into more or less role players because it exists in that sphere. But the idea with the social experience is that it makes the game good in a way because it provides multiple layers of what a social experience can be. So the main example is, I'd say there's two different variables of a social experience, but they're broken up. So you have the PvE social experience, which is you going out into the solo world where you can play solo, you can play with your friends, or you can do a mix of both. You can match up with randoms on missions, etc. You can do whatever you want. And then you have the PvP side, or the Dark Zone, where you can do the same. You can play solo at your own risk. You can play with your own friends at your own risk. You can team up with randoms that you meet in the Dark Zone at your own risk, etc. But there's no guarantee that in the Dark Zone your experience is going to be the same as other players, because every single human being is going to be different. And the social experiences that you have and I have are going to be different. And I think that is the potential that makes the Division a good game. At least in my eyes, from when I played the alpha and the two betas, that's what sold me on the experience, was that I never knew if I was going to run into a rogue or a good guy or a friendly or a bad guy or someone who was just going to chill there at the extraction and wait until that helicopter rope comes down and then throw grenades at us to pick up our loot. That type of social experience that is unpredictable, as sort of the human condition is in a way, where humans are unpredictable, is very intriguing to me. And that's what sold me on the entire concept of the Dark Zone. As it does have flaws, of course, but it's one of the few games, at least in this generation, that offers the ability, the unique experience to experience something that is in a social mindset, but offers multiple variations of what it could be to experience that. So in my personal opinion, yeah, there are things that make a game objectively good, but subjectively, that's where you have to find out what you like. For me, it's the social experience, a little bit of gunplay, of course, crafting helps too, and then the aesthetics. I want to make my character look as badass as possible. I think that's like a core concept for everyone though, but we all vary in terms of what we think. Some people don't really care too much about gunplay, care way more about story, and vice versa. So what do you think? What makes a game good? And if you're going to be picking up the Division, what do you think makes it good? What intrigued you to purchase it? What has made you to buy it? And if you're against it, what has made you against it? What has turned you away? Let me know. You guys are beautiful people. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.